Yeah, okay, I see it now. I see it now.
You may have to put that stream key in, like I told you.
Here we go. All right. Hello, 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 Internet. Welcome back to the No Bullshit Live show. It's been a long time. I'm real excited to be here. We've got a special guest. But first things first, let me know if you guys are having fun out there. Let me know if you can hear us all good and see us all good. I'm going to be checking in with the chat as we go along, making sure our levels are fine and you could hear everything. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Today's guest is Mr. Reagan, fellow YouTuber, fellow video maker, got lots of cool ideas, lots of good videos out there. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into him. How you doing, Mr. Reagan?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Brooks?
Oh, doing awesome. Doing pretty good. I would say maybe there's a little bit of a lot of stuff going on this weekend. A lot of stuff going on with my computer setup, so I'm pretty stoked that I got this new stream going on. I'm not going to brag or anything, but hey, look at us. I mean, you're. I would say, I would say, it's good, but my webcam looks shitty. You look like you're in like a professional movie studio.
Oh, it's even better. I got this new mic. Check this out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Oh, boom.
Dude, so that's the show mic. You're really using the USB mic, and that's
Well,
the.
this is for the stream. So
Okay, cool.
I found that this is a little quiet. So this is fine if I'm doing a video. I can bump up the volume, but if I want to do a stream that's loud, I'll
Sure. No, I have a couple options myself too. I'm kidding you, but no, really glad to meet you. I mean, we just kind of met today. We've been talking a little bit, and I thought about setting up this stream. I've been wanting to stream again, and appreciate everyone that is watching. I saw there was like 100 people waiting. That's awesome. We're gonna jump right into the topics, but go ahead and check out the chat. I see there's a $10 donation. We're gonna get to super chats later, but I really appreciate that first one. We will read them all. But let's jump to today's topic. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this new logo. That's the No Bullshit Live logo. You're welcome. But this is the topic of today.
You're welcome.
This is the topic for today. It's AOC's an actor with Mr. Reagan, and I want to go ahead and just toss it right to you. Why do you? I think it's pretty obvious why I came up with this idea. I mean, I think you've done a number of videos on AOC. I've done tons. I've seen them. We've seen them all over the place. But why do you think AOC's an actor? Let's jump right into it because I think that's kind of like one of your signature arguments.
Yeah, I've kind of been pegged as the AOC guy,
Mm-hmm,
which
mm-hmm.
is really funny because when I was doing videos, when I started doing videos, I was trying to find things that I found interesting that people might want to watch. I was mainly just doing politics, general politics stuff, and I hit upon Jordan Peterson, and a lot of people wanted to see stuff like that, stuff that I would talk about Jordan Peterson stuff. And then I saw that some other people had done videos on AOC. There's one guy in particular called Run Don't Walk. Have you seen this guy?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Great videos. And he was getting a ton of hits on AOC, and I was trying to avoid doing AOC videos because I found her insufferable, right?
She's hard to watch. She's tough.
She's hard to watch. Yeah, and I did one video and it didn't get very many views, and I thought, okay, well, obviously the Run Don't Walk guy, he's the AOC person. He's the one you turn to for AOC stuff, so that's not going to be my thing. And then I started to wonder who was working behind the scenes, like who was the puppeteer, because she was kind of, she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. But she sometimes says some stuff that's very specific about like history, especially like civil rights history, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think I could see where you're going. Like you could see a lot of like written lines, a lot of like kind of like she heard it in a history class or something. Like she's like the first time she ever heard about like Lenin, she's like talking about some kind of like, actually the Bolsheviks really were onto something. But
right. She'll say it's bizarre because most of her interviews are just like, I don't know, like I just think like maybe like something about, I think we should just all like be more like, I don't know, like equal or something like. And then she'll say something very specific, and she'll like Bolsheviks. Like there's probably, I highly doubt she knows
I don't
who the
even know what it
Bolsheviks
means.
are.
I just said it. I just throw it out there like it's.
Well, I think the Bolsheviks were the revolutionaries that took over Russia at the turn of the century, and then that's what became communism, right? But she probably doesn't even know what that is. But somebody will tell her, like she came up with this Ruby something. I forget what it was. She named some person from history in a recent interview, and I had to look it up because I didn't know who the heck she was talking about. And because she was talking about how Trump had tweeted this thing like, "Oh, you guys are, you guys are, go back home and fix your own countries and come here, right? Something like that."
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that was a good one.
And then they asked her what, Trump has accused you of being anti-Semitic. Trump has accused you of hating America. Trump has accused you of, loving Al Qaeda. What do you say to that? What do you say to that? And her response was, well, all through history, people have tried to criticize those who would protect the vulnerable. And then she referenced this girl, Ruby something. I can't remember the last name. And I had to look it up.
I remember that reference. Yeah, I remember that reference because I saw your video too, and it was just like, where did that come from? Oh, like,
thanks for watching.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody, make sure you check out Mr. Reagan, of course, too. You probably already seen a few of his videos. The one thing I did want to backtrack to, and definitely get to that interview. That interview was pretty brutal, and the whole squad stuff. I think we could go on about like the other players in the squad, but you mentioned another YouTuber. I was gonna say you and Don't Walk are like the AOC YouTubers that just popped up for me. Like I think the beginning of the year, I guess, because when AOC popped up too, like it just both of your channels kind of like clicked. And I noticed that too. And I think what it was is like kind of like what you said, like I think he had a lot more videos on it, and like he did some stuff early on, but then it was your AOC, why is AOC an actor video that kind of like really started to take off.
Yeah, because I noticed those little things like the Ruby girl, right? Because the reference to the Ruby girl was a painting by Norman Rockwell of the little girl that was being ushered into the school by the U.S. Marshals when we enacted the law against segregation, right? We were integrating the schools. That's a very obscure reference, right? So it's like, okay, so she doesn't speak well. She's unable to form clear and effective sentences, which obviously I'm having trouble with now.
Oh, it happens. I'm terrible live myself. I mean, I need a script.
I'm pretty good live. I don't know. It's you.
Yeah,
it's all your fault.
My bad luck is spilling over. I actually just had to hug my wife. I'm like, give me some good luck, babe. I need it for the show. I'm nervous over here. No, I'm not that nervous. I'm sounding nervous.
So no, but I started to see these this weird difference between how she is normally and then occasionally she says something kind of smart. And so I thought, okay, there must be a puppeteer in the background. So I looked it up and I found this Saikat Chakrabarti guy, and I looked into it further, and I saw their connection with the Young Turks and Cenk Uygur, which turned out actually to be a little bit of a red herring. He's not as much involved as we thought. And then the mastermind, Zach Exley, and he works for, George S. I won't say the name because it'll probably get this video flagged or something. But yeah, so that's the chain of command. Zach Exley is really the guy who does the whole thing. Right, and actually there's a bit of news on that front. I am actually now finally in communication with Zach Exley. We've been chatting.
Oh, interesting.
I may have an interview coming up with him. We'll see.
Okay.
He asked me to do an interview. We haven't actually set it up yet, but I'm very much looking forward to that. I have so much stuff to ask him.
That's cool. And just to recap, is that person still on AOC's team, or is that a Justice Democrat person?
So Zach Exley is the mastermind behind everything. He kind of set up Justice Democrats. It used to be called Brand New Congress. Saikat Chakrabarti gets all the credit for it, but it's really Zach Exley. He's really the guy.
Okay,
he's like it's like George S. is the Emperor, Zach Exley is Darth Vader, and then Saikat is just like one of the guys that controls one of the ships. He's like a captain of one of the ships.
Awesome.
He's not.
That's awesome.
He was the direct management of AOC. He's the direct handler of AOC.
Okay,
so the concept behind the video is just that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really does not do any of the intellectual heavy lifting in terms of being a congresswoman.
And that's part of the whole thing too. And I think that comes back to your signature thing here. You're that's where I think a lot of people discovered your channel as well. And that was a really cool video, by the way. And yeah, that thing, like you're saying, there's some handlers, you hear these lines, these specific lines that are kind of like your original tells, and then you look deeper into the team behind it, and it's like it's not your typical kind of team of underlings, it's like she's the underling. You know, like she is coming up, and then I think there was other discoveries, kind of exposed things made, like saying that she was legitimately like an actor. It was like some sort of more audition situation than you
The
would
way they
think.
brought her in was through an audition. I'm not 100% convinced that she was brought in that way, but it's really irrelevant. The point, as you say, is that she's really not in charge, and
Hmm.
that's, I think, the concerning aspect of it. It's very much like an actress situation, right? If you're in Hollywood and you want to produce a film and you're a producer, you bring in a director and he sort of like controls the actual production, the actual, day-to-day management of the production. You have a writer who writes the script for you, and then you bring in actors and actresses to express the ideas that the writer has come up with, that you've helped come up with, that the directors come up with, because they're a little bit more charismatic than you guys, right?
Hmm.
Like, if you notice, most Hollywood directors have an actor analog. They have somebody that they bring in and they use as like the cool version of them, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
George Lucas had Harrison Ford, and Tim Burton had Johnny Depp, and these directors will have an actor that they use in most of their movies because they're like, it's kind of like me but cooler,
Right.
and that's kind of what they're doing with AOC.
Just like a
She's
better image too. Like there's a lot of it has to do with, unfortunately, it's like there's certain amount of looks to it. There's certain amount of like just hair, voice, tone, performance,
Yeah, charisma is
style.
worth its weight in gold,
Yeah.
really. I mean, if you have a charismatic person that can carry your message,
Hmm.
you're good. I mean, that's worth millions. That's why actors get paid millions.
And it also comes back to, that's why actors do become politicians often. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not the first time. It's not like it's the first time this has happened. I think just this time it's more like she wasn't
Right.
really a famous actor previously, like which we usually see. And
Well, Reagan was an actor, but I would say that Reagan actually had, he had his own ideas. He
oh,
just also had the charisma to express his own ideas. Whereas, AOC
mhm.
is not a Hollywood actress. She hasn't done any actual acting, as far as I know, but she does have that charisma that
Mhm.
she can relay a message effectively.
And that's a pretty great parallel. I didn't even realize getting into it, but
Mhm.
it's like Mr. Reagan, the actor president, is calling out
Yeah,
AOC, the
yeah.
actor
And
congresswoman.
I mean, I was an actor in
Oh
Hollywood
yeah,
before I started to do this.
that's
I'm
cool.
going to be in a couple of movies coming out.
I saw your
You're gonna see me.
headshots, looking good.
There's actually, what's really funny? I was in this movie recently with Charlize Theron and Margot Robbie and Nicole Kidman, and it's actually a Fox News hit piece. It's like an anti-Fox News movie. It's about Roger Ailes and that whole thing. There was another one on Showtime recently with Russell Crowe, but that's a different. That's like a made-for-TV thing.
Right, right. I've seen a
This
couple
is
of
an actual
those.
feature. This is an actual feature film that's going to come out this year,
That's cool.
and I have one line. I can't remember what the line is. I think it's something like. Drudge took down the report. And everybody runs and looks at the computer. I think that's my only line. But
That's
I was
cool.
hanging out with Margot Robbie. We were in the little cubicle together,
That's awesome.
and
That's awesome.
we're now engaged. So you can go ahead
Look
and
at
tell.
you. That's how it
Yeah.
happens. It's that fast. That's a
Yeah.
good one. That's a good one. I was gonna say I really loved Margot in Once Upon a Time. Like that movie just came out. It was really good.
Yeah, I hated it. So you and I can have a little fist fight about
Oh,
that.
you didn't like it?
I
Oh my
think, and
gosh.
not to give anything away, but I think that movie embodied something that's kind of popular in Hollywood now, which is setting up an anti-climax. There's this thing in
Hmm.
Hollywood that they're doing now, which is they're trying to subvert expectations, but they don't know
Yeah,
how
I
to
was
do it.
gonna say that. I would totally see where that for sure.
Because subversion of expectations is a great thing to do in a story, right? People have certain, and Hitchcock used to talk about this, right? Like movie cliches are good because you build the audience up to an expectation by leading them toward a movie cliche, and then you have something else happen. But the thing that has to happen else has to be better than the cliche. It has to be either more realistic or more interesting or match with the plot better. And what they're tending to do these days, and they did it with Star Wars recently with the whole like Luke Skywalker gets his lightsaber in this very dramatic moment at the end of the first movie,
Hmm.
and then in the second movie he goes, who needs this?
Yeah, that's the best worst example of like, oh,
Yeah.
reversing your expectations just to be a dick. But I don't know if
Yeah,
I
and
saw it that way with Tarantino. No, I thought Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was pretty good, man.
okay, think about it. Think about this. Think about the scene with Bruce Lee, right? You're kind of expecting something to happen there, and then it just kind of nothing happens. There's a scene with Brad Pitt. He takes his shirt off on this rooftop, and they show you that he's in view of Sharon Tate's window.
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
expect some kind of sexy thing or romantic thing to happen. Nothing happened. They just like leave it, like nothing ever happened. So many moments in that movie.
There's a lot of
build-ups.
Yeah,
A lot of setups, and then it's not even a subversion of expectation in the sense that something else happens. Nothing happens. It's the most anticlimactic film in the history of cinema. Sorry, that's fair. That's my little diatribe about film.
No,
that's nothing to do with politics. Everybody's like, why is this guy talking about movies?
I think it's fine. No, we actually talk about movies a lot here. We talk about TV shows and all that stuff. So politics is involved. I mean, I think the one reason that movie came up too, and maybe you could get your take on this, because one thing I thought of was how it was kind of like an anti-SJW movie. And that's one thing.
Okay. You can hit me there. I'm curious. I haven't heard about that.
So to me, like, I like Tarantino because he's like the last bastion of like male movies out there. Like, no one else is going to be allowed to make like a straight white male starring movie in like 3 or 4 years from now. And kind of like Tarantino does that, and he also does all the action and the killing and the, he does. And then in this movie specifically, it was kind of like the thing about it was, I feel like a lot of people felt like the hippies were like SJWs. And like,
oh yeah, they even had Lena Dunham.
Yeah, Lena Dunham. They had an SJW as one of the hippies, like literal SJW. And that's the thing. And like, I think there was also some references. I mean, yeah, again, I don't want to give away
another anticlimactic scene when he goes to look for his buddy in the house in the little hippie thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course. And then there's
nothing happened. Again, nothing happened. Sorry to ruin.
No, that's good. That's good. And not to spoil. We're obviously not going to talk about the end or anything. But and I will get to the chat more soon. By the way, I see you guys commenting like crazy. Appreciate that. I appreciate the nearly 800 people watching. That's awesome. We're coming
hello,
up
800 people.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I will try to check those super chats. Those are much appreciated, and that's how we pay for the show. So thanks again. Let's see. Back to Once Upon, though. The thing I was gonna say was, okay, so
the SJW,
the SJWs were the hippies, and then we literally had a hippie as an SJW, and they all kind of got like they got like screwed over, like, and the whole movie was like kind of showing them that hippies sucked and everyone hated the hippies. Like, my favorite part was one time DiCaprio like looks out the window, he's like, damn dirty hippies. And
I love that too. Yeah,
good.
That's a great. It was kind of like a Dirty Harry moment or something. I think I saw Harrison Ford, Clint Eastwood at some point in a movie go, "Shut your face, hippie." It was like one of my favorite lines from any movie ever. Yeah, that was great. There were a couple good lines. I will give you this. At the very early part of the movie, the only really good line other than that one was there was this moment where like Leonardo DiCaprio's character is kind of upset, and he starts crying, which is kind of weird for a grown man,
Right.
But his buddy Brad Pitt, who's the stunt man, it's like, hey man, come on. You don't cry in front of Mexicans.
yeah, I know. That was good. That was so good.
I'm in LA, so like me and my girlfriend are sitting there watching the movie, and we're just dying laughing at this, right? Because it's so, you can't say something like that today. Yeah. But in the 60s, presumably people would say something like that.
Well, the other thing too
laughing is like nobody else. But listen, nobody else in the theater was laughing. Literally I looked around, everybody else was like this.
Yeah, that's the thing, like, because it doesn't that humor, and it's almost like you're not even allowed to do that in a movie sense. Like these days.
Yeah, I will give you this. He does not like to be confined by PCBS, but I definitely suspect that Tarantino is like a leftist SJW type.
Yeah,
but I don't know for sure.
It's probable, it's definitely.
I haven't spoken to him personally. Hey, Valeria, what do you think? He's an a-hole. She was in the movie. That's why we went.
Oh, cool.
She was one of the dirty hippies. Actually, my girlfriend played one of the dirty hippies.
You're married.
It's just a background.
You're dating a hippie. Good for you, man. It's good. It's progressive.
She hated it. She actually came home like practically in tears because she was just covered in like, it wasn't real dirt. It was like makeup dirt, but just filthy. And she's just like, I have to shower. Don't touch me. And her hair was all greasy, and she was just like, sick. She's like grossed out. Tarantino called her the little Russian, so she's hated him ever since. The what? Okay, the short Russian. Sorry.
Nice.
She called her the short Russian, so she's kind of.
Well, let me jump back here for a second. I got a couple things I was going to, but before we get back, we'll go back to a little more of the AOC stuff later. But I wanted to ask you specifically, like you've been on a couple shows lately. You've been doing some of the rounds, and yeah, do you think this is a big step down from the Glenn Beck podcast? I'm worried. I want to impress you. Like, do you want a water or something? Can I send you like I'll get you an Airbnb or something? I don't know. What
I will say, Glenn Beck's program was very cool. I mean, like, you know, they put me up in a hotel, and have you been on Glenn Beck?
No.
They should have.
No, I was just kidding. Yeah, I was just kidding. I just saw that when I was looking up some stuff before the show. I was like, oh, dude, he was on this Glenn Beck, and you were on a couple other ones too. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But
you want to hear something funny about what happened with the Glenn? I will tell you this: Glenn Beck is one of the nicest, best people I've ever met. I mean, he's genuinely like a good man, which is hard to find sometimes in the world, right? Somebody who genuinely wants to help the world, make things better, and he actually, you know, cares about humanity. But when we start the podcast, or, you know, I walk in, I should not say this, but this is true. This happened. So I walk in, I sit down, I see him, and he's got this like waistcoat, and he's all, I mean, he just looks great, right? He's got this whole sort of like on TV, you don't really think about how well people are dressed because it's TV. Of course, they're dressed well, right? But when you see somebody that well dressed in real life, it's actually quite impressive. So before the podcast started, before they started shooting and said action, I go, Glenn, man, after we're done with this, you got to give me some fashion tips. You look great. And Glenn just starts laughing, and he stops and he goes, you can't talk before we start. I have to have silence before we start. And I'm like, oh, no, sorry, totally. You know, he's got to get in his head.
I know,
right?
it's like, but when you dress that proper too, it's elaborate. You know, he's got like a lot of parts and pieces over there. You got your shirt, your undershirt, your
it was elaborate.
vest.
Elaborate. I just thought it was funny. He was like, you can't talk before the podcast. I mean, he wasn't rude or anything, but it was funny. It was like, we need silence.
No, he's like getting in the zone.
He's like an artist or something. You know, he needs to be in his world. I just thought that was
so.
Great.
Besides the great looking attire, was that a good show? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, absolutely.
Good,
I mean, I did both the Glenn Beck show and I did their like they have like something called the News and Why It Matters, and it's like 4 people chit chatting together.
Cool.
Those people were all very cool. His show was awesome. I mean, it was a little bit like this. We're just like saying whatever came to our mind and talking about the left.
Yeah, good stuff. The other one I noticed, and this is a show. I don't know if it's a show, but I've been on. What was it like streaming with Destiny's Child? Destiny.
Yeah, that guy. I'll tell you what. You know what's really weird about that is, there's 2 things that happen on that show, and I learned a very valuable lesson. So you went on as well, I saw, and I'll ask you about your experience. But in my experience, I went in thinking, okay, I don't want to destroy this guy. I watched a couple of videos that he had, gone in and debated people, and he's kind of weaselly. And I thought, okay, well,
kind of,
I could pretty easily. Yeah, I like understatement.
Yeah. You're a real nice guy, Mr. Reagan. I'll give you that.
This is the thing. I went in thinking I want to be nice to him. I kind of want to win him over. I don't want to destroy him. I don't want to own him. I don't want to take him down. What I want to do is go in and reason with the guy, okay? Make him understand that basically, just because somebody doesn't want a bunch of Mexicans moving into their small town, that doesn't mean they're an evil person. And that sounds like a terrible thing, especially with like the shooter and stuff that we just had. But not everybody has that mentality of I hate, right? Some people just want to preserve their culture, and that's a real legitimate thing to want.
Sure.
And I would say this for anybody anywhere in the world, right? I am sympathetic to that concern. So I came in to try to convince him that was not the worst idea in the world. But what I learned is that at the end of the day, when you're debating somebody, you really do have to, the reaction was terrible. People were just like, oh, you know, I didn't know you were racist, and it's
Oh,
like,
it's
and
like,
like,
yeah,
oh,
it's never good. It's never good. You can't come out of that in a good.
and he had a lot of fans like really attack me brutally afterwards and stuff like that. Like his fans are nasty people, you know.
Oh yeah,
And
they attack
I
you for
just thought,
years. Like you got like 2 years of it on to get used to. Because I've
yeah,
been dealing with their trolls and like the people like coming back with like quotes from those streams like 2 years later. So they're like still
there
analyzing
is a
it in
kind of
the Discord
right.
servers.
Yeah, there is a kind of YouTuber, I think, that appeals to, you know, the sort of resentful 13-year-old boys. You know, people out there that are just out there to like, you know, kill you and get you and own you and destroy you and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And those kind of vicious people, they're not the kind of people that watch my show. I'm trying to have rational, you know, discourse with people.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized is, at the end of the day, you kind of have to be a little bit more brutal with somebody when you're debating them in front of a huge audience,
Mm-hmm.
because they have no motivation whatsoever to be convinced by anything that you say. The whole idea is you need to look better in front of the audience, and if you're one-on-one with somebody, like in a room, you should totally be nice to them, right? You should be nice to them and cordial and respectful. But if you're in a debate in front of other people, you can't really do that, because their perception of what you're doing is going to be seen as weakness, which I thought was really kind of sad.
Well, that's whole
kind of what
that brings up the whole question of the whole thing too, because I always kind of felt like that. I was like, I mean, they like to frame it as a debate, but it's like, is this really a debate? Like, are we really like they try to set it up like, oh, we're doing some collegiate debate, like point for point. You know, there's no moderator though. There's no like set term limits. Like it's not like the debate to me was always just kind of seemed like a ruse. Like it's like they trying to sound.
Yeah, you need a moderator and you need some kind of parameters, and
Right.
I should probably debate him again, and this time actually, like, you know, call him out on all the times that because what a lot of times within a debate, if you don't want to be proven wrong, you'll just shift the argument, right? I think they call that moving the goalposts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll change you change sort of where the conversation is going into sort of a direction where it's not so obvious that you're wrong. And he tries to do that a lot. And I actually got him on a couple of points where he had to agree with me because it was too obvious that he, you know, would naturally agree with this if he weren't in a debate situation. And he was like, okay, yeah, you know what? You're right. And I kind of won him over on a couple of things, but nevertheless, his fans are just crazy. Like his fans just want him to win and want you to win. They don't care about reason or anything.
Yeah, their arguments, and I mean the stuff that he tries to defend is ridiculous. I don't even want to get into the topics again. I'm not sure what your topics were specifically, but it's just a mess. And I just thought it was funny that I saw you there because it's kind of like it's almost like a rite of passage for like YouTubers, like specifically like kind of guys similar to us, I think. And when you're on our side of the aisle, it's just they're eventually like the guys like that. Destiny is going to come after you, and that
was kind of a bad. That was actually I wrote him, and I was like, hey, we should chat. But I didn't. I did no preparation for the debate at all, and we didn't even really talk about the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Right.
We mostly ended up talking about school choice, and it's really weird. You can win every point in a debate, but if the person's fans don't they just don't want to listen to you or like you or want to be open-minded to your ideas, you're still going to appear to lose to them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's
anyway,
fun.
what are the topics you guys talked about? What are the topics?
Well, we went over a few things, but I think it's besides the point at this point. I think I'm going to move on because I wanted to talk about this other thing really quick before we get too far along. But yeah, back to the AOC stuff, and I'm sorry if it's too much for you because I don't know if you're like sick of being like the AOC guy or something. But
dude, I am so sick of being the AOC guy, but it's all good because I am now more or less an AOC expert.
Right.
So
well, this is the one I want to know. Have you seen the BuzzFeed video?
Which one?
They did a video about you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it was a few months ago, I guess. It was like April, I think. But
yeah, the BuzzFeed video. There was a BuzzFeed video. That was essentially copied and pasted from a Snopes article, which was total to coin a phrase of yours, BS.
Right. Well, I just thought that was funny because that was another thing I came across looking into some stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's how you know your original kind of argument was good. Like the AOC actor thing is really taken off because now it's like BuzzFeed's chiming in, like trying to support Snopes, who Snopes is supposed to be like a debunker. Like they used to be like
an arbiter of truth.
Yeah, they used to be like some kind of middle guy, but now it's totally biased. And
totally.
And when I saw that video, I was like, "Oh, BuzzFeed did one." And then that girl was so cringy that was in the video. I was like, "Oh my god, I think I wanted to cover it or something."
How did she get a job in front of the camera?
What's that?
How did she get a job in front of a camera?
I know, it's like they didn't even try. I mean,
it's like they grabbed the secretary. It's like the host was missing that day, so they just grabbed the girl from the front desk and they were like, "Hey, you're gonna have to do this today because we need to shoot."
Yeah, and she didn't even seem like she wanted to be there. But well, let me just get. What are your thoughts on that video? Just overall, our first impressions. Like, when did you hear about it coming out?
Let me tell you exactly what I think of it. I actually wrote both BuzzFeed and Snopes before they posted their things because they reached out to me. And I told them I would cooperate, but I wanted them. Snopes did something very clever, right? And then obviously BuzzFeed followed suit. They did not actually try to debunk my claim that AOC was not really in charge of her messaging or her voting or anything like that, right? They actually acquiesced to that point and said, well, that's just what lots of campaigns do. Lots of campaigns are like that.
It's like everyone's doing it. Everyone does that.
Everybody's doing it. It's fine. No, not everybody's doing that. I mean, people have influences, of course. The president has influences. I have influences. You have influences. We all have influences. But being influenced by other people is not the same as literally having the message scripted by other people. Okay. And so what they focused on was the question of whether or not, this is completely crazy. What they debunked was my assertion that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was an actress. Now, I didn't say that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was an actress in the sense that she has a SAG card, she's with the Screen Actors Guild, and she's in movies, all right? That's not the accusation that I made. The accusation of calling her an actress was the same as calling her a puppet, right? When I say she's a puppet, I don't mean she's got green felt and she's moved by little sticks, okay? That's not what I mean, right? These are called analogies.
She's like, wait, right? She's not Kermit. She's not Miss Piggy. Are you kidding me?
Right. False, debunked. You're right. I made this point in my response. I made a response video to that. I made this point. It was like when you call Grandpa a dinosaur because he doesn't know how to text message, you're not actually saying that he's a prehistoric lizard that died, that was extinct millions of years ago. No, it's an analogy. It's a metaphor. You don't need to debunk that expression, right? No, Grandpa is not a dinosaur. We all know that. When I say AOC was an actress, nobody thinks that they grabbed her off of a Broadway stage and put her in front of Congress. That's not what people think. Nobody believes that. I'm not being deceptive when I say that, okay? They are being deceptive when they say that she's not an actress because they're not actually countering my actual assertion, which if you watch the whole video, it's very clear. They're just countering my analogy. So yeah, you can debunk analogies all you want, but it's not going to actually help anybody. Okay. You're just deceiving the public.
They kind of went around it. I could see what you're saying. And then I noticed that too. I watched some of it and a lot of the comments seemed to be against the video. Like I don't think it did very well. I forget how it did on that BuzzFeed.
Oh my God. Yeah. The BuzzFeed, it was just, I mean, it got what they would call on Twitter totally ratioed. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was downvoted like crazy. Everybody, all the comments were hilarious. I mean, it was just basically like, you guys are all idiots. Watch his video. You didn't debunk anything. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You got through that. And I thought that was funny. BuzzFeed trying to get in there. And then the other thing that reminded me of was just in general, I've kind of commented on this because I think we've all talked about BuzzFeed here or there over the years, but they kind of like weren't political for a while. Like they haven't been so much like specifically like they used to be all pro social justice stuff too, but then they kind of came back to get that video on you. And then I kind of thought of that. I was like, wow, they're like coming out of retirement. They're like coming back for one more season, like
I haven't been paying attention to the BuzzFeed trend, but that's funny.
It is. Yeah. I think that's kind of what's going on there. But yeah, moving on from that, let's talk about some of these other greatest hits kind of thing. I wanted to say like, greatest hits of AOC. Specifically, I think we've
Okay.
talked enough about, politics. She's wrong about socialism. She's wrong about Green New Deal. What do you think about her not knowing how to use a garbage disposal?
Yeah, I did a little joke about that. My girlfriend and I did this thing where like it was a little sketch, right? And this is pretty. I think more people should have seen this. I think this should have gotten viral. I'm not getting any views now. I think YouTube is suppressing both of us. Which, by the way, I got to say, you got one of the best channels on YouTube, sir.
Thank you.
And you are well worth the subscriber count, but you are worth far more views.
Hold on,
per
I'm going to give
video.
you a close up on that one. Hold on, close up camera one more time from the top.
One of the best channels on YouTube. NoBS.
All right, that's my new outro. That's my new outro.
Yeah, exactly. So Valeria and I did this video where she played AOC and I played the boyfriend.
I saw
and
it.
I would come in.
Hilarious.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah, really good,
Yeah.
really good.
And the very last thing, the little twist at the end is I leave her, right? The boyfriend leaves AOC because she's just too crazy. And she doesn't say anything, but she looks down in the sink and she just goes, "What's that?" And that's the end of it.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I can't, but
It's
really like
okay.
specifically like what?
Continue.
Yeah, no, really specifically about the garbage disposal because this is important to me.
Yeah. It's weird,
Okay.
right? It's weird.
Is it? Do you really think she didn't know of what the garbage disposal was, or do you think she was just saying that to try to be like XOXO relatable?
No, I think that she was trying to be relatable, but I also think she's never seen a garbage disposal. But I think that says a lot more about her than she thinks, and it's not what she wants it to say. So she saw the garbage disposal, and in her mind, she's like, okay, I grew up middle class, or this is maybe like something rich people have because we didn't have one of these in our household. So I'm going to make a video showing how common I am not having had a garbage disposal. All right. So you're telling me all of your life you had tons of different friends. You grew up in essentially like a rich, one of the wealthiest areas in the country. All of your friends, you go into their house, hanging out. You never ever saw a garbage disposal. Okay, so that to me says one thing: you've never done dishes in your life.
Exactly. I thought that too. It's like rich people shit. It's like, oh, I don't know how to use a wash. I don't know how to do my laundry. Like you just moved out for college or some kind of stuff.
Garbage disposal. Is that something the maid uses? Good Lord. Oh, it seems so dangerous when I turn it on. I don't even understand. Yeah, so that's my take on it. That she's just so damn privileged. She doesn't know.
It's a combination. Then it's like, she's trying to be relatable, and she didn't know what it was, and she like pushed it so far, and it's just like, wow, she didn't realize. That just shows kind of the out of touchness too. And this is what you were saying before, basically, like, just this is how out of touch she is with normal people. I mean, there's plenty of people like I don't know. This is maybe another example. Like Trump is kind of like could be considered out of touch because he's so rich, but I think he has that like ability to still realize how normal people are, and that's really cruel.
All his life he's working with construction guys.
Yeah.
He's always working with foremen and construction guys and talking crap with these guys. He knows what normal people are. I mean, he's exactly like my dad. That's the really funny thing about Trump. Yeah, this is why I can perceive what Trump's saying better than most people. Although my dad's not quite as vulgar as Trump, but they sort of say this. They sort of speak the same way. My dad's dyslexic, so sometimes he mixes up words. He doesn't say things quite right.
Okay.
And this is fairly typical of your sort of blue collar guy. He kind of knows what he wants to say. He can say it in a way that his people, like people who understand him and know who he is, they'll understand him. But it's like any kind of like regional dialect. The way that you speak is clear to the people that you know.
Sure.
But it may not be the Queen's English, right? It's not like BBC English. You're not on television, so not everything you say is perfectly clear to every kind of American, right? And I actually taught myself to speak like that when I was a kid, because we did grow up poor. And actually, I didn't have a garbage disposal when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I remember other people having garbage disposals and thinking, oh, that's cool. That's what people with more money than we have, right? And I literally thought that. And then we moved when I was about 10, and we got a garbage disposal in the house that my parents had got. So yeah, then we had a garbage disposal. But But I still knew what they were.
Yeah.
I still knew what they were.
That's the difference. That's the difference is kind of like being aware.
Like a child.
Yeah. And then, okay, so the other thing with that said, and I like that you were talking about speaking and stuff too, so I think we could go a little bit with that. Let's just talk about speech patterns and like, okay, I say like a lot too, but let's talk about, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speaking, like she's like what's she does, like, she's trying to be, oh, what's up, we're so good, that is not okay, that's not okay, like she does that other stuff in Congress talking about just the dumbest stuff. Like her speaking is totally god awful. Am I correct?
Yeah. I'm the boss. How about
yeah,
that?
how about that? That's
that?
the one I was trying to think of. The girl from Dr. Phil in
Dr. Phil,
and so much
cash me outside.
So much up talk too. I think and that's a common trend, maybe in everywhere. But another thing that was mentioned was with just the Democrats in general, because there was those debates and people were saying, I think I saw some tweets saying, oh, like everyone of the Democrats does an up talk. They're always like, we're going to save the economy and we're going to give everyone free health care. And you're going to get
yeah, there's a Valley Girl type thing. Well, honestly, I think that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a spoiled brat. I don't think that she's in any way hood, ghetto, street, hip hop, whatever you want to call it. She has none of that, right? She did not grow up with any of that. I think that she grew up in an area where probably kids made fun of that kind of way of speaking, right? Mm-hmm. Like, like a Cash Me Outside girl. Mm-hmm. I'm sure people did impressions of that kind of way of speaking in New York while she was growing up. I think every time she goes a little bit hood or a little bit whatever, I think that is her imitation of those people. I think that the only experience she had with that kind of speaking was with the white kids at her school ridiculing
mocking other people. And yeah, I think that's credible. And I think there are those instances which I think you have in mind, is those other times where she is speaking in it was like a black person conference or something, NAACP or like that. And she was just like going off like in a straight up, she was going like full,
this is how we do
going full Hillary Clinton, y'all. I put hot sauce on everything, y'all.
and I'm watching it. I'm thinking, I could do that too. AOC. Yeah, doesn't make me black.
Yeah, chat says it's pandering, and trying to look cool, which I agree with. And I think
but they accept it. They accept it because she's Puerto Rican and she's a Democrat. Mm-hmm. So they say, well, it's sort of like who's that guy from Minnesota? The guy from SNL, the actor, comedian. He was a congressman.
Oh yeah, the Al Franken.
Al Franken, yeah. Al Franken has like photos of him grabbing this woman's boobs, I think, and making jokes and stuff, sexually like provocative stuff, which, I don't actually care about that stuff so much because it is kind of a joke and all that sort of thing. And I don't really think it's that terrible. Definitely the girl when she was sleeping, that was actually quite terrible. Mm-hmm, I think that even though he's making a joke, that's not excusable. But a lot of Democrats didn't seem to care about that. They said, well, but he's doing such a good job. He's so important for our cause that, it's fine if he rapes a few girls. It's fine. It's like, wait, what? No. You can't have their double standards are absurd. They have no principles, right? They just have a direction, right? They just have a goal. They have I don't know what I would call it. They have a mission or something. And the principles that they espouse, they're not real principles. They're just rules that they can use to exploit people, to get them on board, to help push the country in the direction that they want.
Right.
They have a goal. They have a mission. This is what we're trying to do. We'll pretend that we have principles so that we can bring people on board to push us toward that goal. But they're principle free.
Yeah,
they're principle
fluid. They're just like their genders. Their principles are fluid.
Fluid and their principle fluid. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Exactly.
I'm stealing.
That's now my. Yeah, just quote me. Tweet me.
now a Mr. Reagan thing. I'm taking it.
Okay, cool, cool.
Love it.
By the way, I love the name Mr. Reagan. I didn't get to say that yet. Cool name. Yours is good too. And where'd you come up with that? Is it your favorite president?
Everybody always asks me that. I would say that, yeah, by far he's my favorite president.
Cool.
I was a kid when Reagan was in office, and he really reminded me of my grandfather. And I didn't think about that at the time, because when you're like a little kid, there's only you have a very small framework of people within which you see the world. So my grandfather was a particular type of person, and President Reagan
Mhm.
was precisely the same type of guy. And they actually kind of even looked similar. So they were both very tall. They both had, I think they must have some kind of similar ancestry. We must have some kind of similar, because there is a sort of similar look.
Mhm.
And they spoke kind of the same, and they had a kind of the similar cadence, a sort of almost a John Wayne type cadence. And so everything about my grandfather was very similar to President Reagan. And so now when I look back at Reagan, I oftentimes get a little bit nostalgic for my grandfather. He's dead now, but I have to get, because they both had like, they both seemed at least like strong Christians. My grandfather certainly was, but Reagan had he evoked God all the time,
Sure.
and he seemed to have this very strong foundation in Christian ethics.
Mhm, mhm.
And that was a time. The 1980s were a time when you did have a lot of strong immorality in the media, right? You had this strong push toward immorality. You had, like, if you watch the movie The Goonies, even the whole movie is just like swearing from beginning to end, right?
Yeah.
Foul-mouthed kids.
It's like,
That was a fun thing for them in the 80s, was for like a
that
little
was good
kid
stuff
to use
too.
the
That's classic, and that reminds me, because I just went through and they just had the season 3 of Stranger Things, which was kind of like
yes.
the
Great show.
great show, and it reminds me of that. And this is actually, I think I spun off of that because then I started watching this show, The Americans, which is
Okay. I haven't seen it. Is it really
yeah,
good?
that one's good too, and that one's a whole different thing. But it's set in the 80s, and they're spies and stuff. But anyway, it reminded me, and besides the bad stuff, the spy stuff in the Cold War was obviously could be a tricky situation. But I think that's kind of, you're talking about the 80s. I love the 80s too. I was very young, but just looking back on that time, that's kind of like the time where we have this MAGA comes from. MAGA, Make America Great Again, in a
Right.
lot of ways is kind of, in my opinion, and I think this has been called into question recently too, because some people say, Make America Great Again means racist times in the 50s or something like that, like longer ago. But I think 80s is like a good sweet spot, because it's like there was more equal rights, there was more, racism was on a downturn. Like there was the Cold War, but in general, like the country under Reagan were very like prosperous and productive, and just lots of.
Well, it's always been weird to me that people look at any era historically and say, and if somebody says, "Oh, that was a great time," and somebody else says, "Why? Because of racism."
Mhm.
It's like so stupid. Okay, there's a lot to say about that. What I was going to say about the 80s was that you had this sort of like Madonna, type, she was very popular, and there was all this sort of push toward immorality and debauchery and stuff. But then with that, you had this balance, right? You had this other side, which was like the religious right, and very strong, like everybody was going to church, and there was this kind of strong push toward finding your purpose in life, right? There was all of this prosperity in America. People had a lot of hope. People had a lot of
There's self-help crazes too, like you're saying. Like that's where a lot of self-help and a lot of the church. The reason people are turning to the church too is to get that positive message. Like get that kind of like.
Yeah, and just to figure out what life is about. They had this song called from U2 called "I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For."
Great song.
And I saw some interview with somebody who said that song really summarized a lot, the 80s for a lot of people, especially like in the cities, like in New York and LA, because people wanted purpose. And I remember in my childhood, everyone from, my grandfather to all of my aunts and uncles, to my cousins, to my parents. I mean, we were kids, so we didn't care that much, but they all seemed to be confident. They all seemed to know what they wanted in life. They seemed to be working hard to get it. They all had some kind of sense of who they were in the world and what the world was and all that. And it was all pretty much straightforward. And I think people like that, to truly have this kind of confidence and knowledge. And I do think that a lot of confidence in the way the world works comes from being a devoutly religious person. Because my family's very devoutly religious. We all went to church, every
Okay.
Sunday, and my cousins, actually, my aunt and uncle homeschooled my cousins, and they were actually part of a kind of a fundamentalist part of Christianity that we all kind of looked at like, oh, that's a little weird. But
Yeah.
but they had the same thing, right? They had this kind of sense of their place in the world, and that they were at least trying to do the right
Hmm.
thing. And if you look at biblical teachings, and Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, whether or not you're devoutly religious Christian, religious teachings does allow you to function in the world confidently, because it is so accurate in its explanation of kind of how things work in the world. Not really explanation, but if you give somebody advice, even if you don't explain precisely why that advice will work, if they follow the advice, if it works perfectly, you don't necessarily need to explain why it works perfectly. And I think that's a lot of what Christianity does. You
Hmm.
talk to you read the Bible, you go to church, you get these ideas about the world, and then you function in the world in a way, and it works a lot better than if you don't have that. I feel
Yeah, and
like.
I
Now,
think that
atheists
relates
disagree with
to,
that.
like we were saying, back to the 80s and stuff. It is the big part of that, the spirituality. There was a lot of just big waves of church coming around in America, like church waves. Televangelists started popping up more, and all around. I
Yeah,
mean, when I was a kid, I went to Catholic school.
some of whom were kind of shady characters, actually turned out
Yeah,
too.
I didn't turn out very religious, but I went to Catholic school myself, like until eighth grade. So that was like pretty common back in my day. I was more in the early '90s, but still, it's coming off of that. And I think the other thing, to go back to that a little bit, because I did want to talk about another. Kind of bounce back, I guess, because you're talking about, you look back on time and people say, "Oh, it was racist back then." That's the problem with a lot of basically mainstream media people, liberals, and social justice warriors that get triggered. And I had the same thing come up because it happens in the 80s, but also in any decade, like pretty much you could find this kind of like problem, and there'll always be like an issue. And the last one was Once Upon a Time got a lot of flack for that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie. To talk about that again just briefly, like,
Bring that back.
yeah,
Yeah.
just not to kiss its ass again, but I did defend it in a video, because that was a thing where they're like, oh, they're attacking Tarantino for making a movie in 1969, and they're like, don't you know there was like the racism back then, like blah blah blah. Don't you know this problems back then? And I'm like, yeah, there's problems in every time period though. It's like they just want to attack it, and it's basically they're saying you can't be nostalgic, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can't be nostalgic because they always look at the, and Tarantino is very obviously, I mean, he's kind of a weird guy. He's like, okay, well, let's take this period of the Holocaust, and we don't like what happened, right? We don't like that Hitler killed all these Jewish people. What would be a better solution? What would be the most fun solution? There's a spoiler here for Inglorious Bastards, guys. So if you haven't seen Inglorious Bastards, plug
Yeah,
your
you've
ears.
had 10 years. You've had
And
10 years. Here it comes.
is it 10
Yeah,
years?
it's been out for 10 years.
So he's like, okay, guys, what are we gonna do? What if a group of angry Jewish people just absolutely murdered, Hitler in the most violent possible way, just brutally murdered him with a machine gun, just destroyed his body. That'd be awesome. Let's do that instead of the real story. Let's put that in, right? So he's got this, and then with Django, he's like, all right, well, we had slavery, and then white Americans who were anti-racist or anti-slavery said, we don't like this. You guys have to stop. And the slave owner said, but we're making all this money, and I mean, are they really human? Am I right? And the people in the North were like, yes, they are really human. You can't have slaves.
Well,
They
that's
said,
another
okay,
time
no,
period too. Like I was saying before, like they can always come up with an issue in every time period. Obviously, there are issues in back time periods, and the one you're just talking about, whichever the 1800s or something, like they want to use that, like, oh, but there was slavery, and they kind of do that with all of America at this point. Like actually, this came up. What was I talking about before? I think a couple days ago we were talking about that Witcher show. The Witcher is coming out on Netflix. Yeah.
oh, really? From the video game?
Like a TV show based on the game, and then books. There's a mythology to it.
Oh, I didn't read some of the books.
Yeah. It was like originally some books, and then it's also based on like Polish mythology, like ancient.
no wonder the game's so good. I was like, why is the story of that game so much better than the story in other games? It's because they took it from a
Yeah,
book. I
that
didn't
it's
realize.
kind of like it's almost like a Game of Thrones series now that I think about it. It's like a big book series, And the thing that reminded me of it was because, like we are talking about, you go back in time periods and whatnot, and this person that was writing The Witcher is saying, oh, they're asking her, basically, someone asked her why she keeps recasting these characters as different races, because Polish myth and Witcher characters are supposed to be like old European middle-aged white people, or Middle Ages and Europeans, and they're all white in the books, and they're like described as so, like specifically. But this
Right.
writer keeps changing it, and the first thing that she says was like, "Oh well, America had slaves, and there's slavery past, and we've always oppressed minorities, so that's why I could change the casting now in 2019." And I was just like, "What are you talking about?" And then now that we're talking about this sort of nostalgia, looking back in history thing, it reminds me of that kind of thing where it's like this kind of person is always going to say American history is bad because we had slaves.
Right. Right. Oh yeah. No matter what. And well, I was talking about Tarantino essentially looking at this time period and saying, well, what would have been a much cooler outcome than the Civil War, right? Because the Civil War was basically white people freeing the slaves, which a lot of people don't like that because they want to cast all white people as bad and all black people as good.
Mm-hmm.
This is how the left looks at the world. So if all white people are good, well, the Civil War is problematic because it was white people who freed the slaves. So how do we rewrite history in a way in which the black people were actually the heroes of their own story, right? The heroes that freed themselves. And by the way, we have some black heroes in history, like Frederick Douglass.
Sure.
There's no reason to do this. But
Yeah,
whatever.
and
This is Tarantino's thing.
going back to, I think you're talking about Django a bit, and it's like that's the kind of thing.
I'm talking about Django.
Yeah. Django is a
So
cool thing.
he instead makes this hero that just like murders like the white slave owner and burns down the plantation because that's what Tarantino wanted to, would have preferred happened in history.
Right.
But I find that to be a sort of a kind of a disturbing way of making a movie. Now, I can't tell Tarantino how to make a movie. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't rewrite history in that way. But to me, that's a very SJW thing to do. It's like, well, we didn't have history. History didn't happen quite how we wanted it. So this is how we would have liked it.
Yeah, and I mean that could
So
segue into just in general, like those kind of SJW, they tend to rewrite history. They want to reframe stuff, and
exactly. This is exactly my point.
Yeah, and they do that in a lot of cases, and even in the like I was talking about American history, or you could talk about another time period like the 60s or 70s, and they just always kind of want to like look at it all the negative, kind of like more what fits their agendas too. It's like.
Well, here's what I would say about real history. Real history is much muddier than the way that we perceive it. Right? We assume that all slave owners were pure evil. Well, what if, this is an awful thing to say, people probably think I'm a monster, but what if there were some slave owners that were like friends with the slaves that they had? Pretty nice guys, and the slaves liked them, and they all kind of got along pretty well. I'm sure that probably happened occasionally.
Right.
There were a lot of slave owners, and there were a lot of slaves. And that's kind of a disturbing idea that we have, because we think that, well, if you're a slave, you to some extent lose your humanity, right? Because you lose any kind of freedoms that you might have. So it's a very undignified state. And of course, I agree with that. Everybody does. But that said, that I often come up, it's some time ago, I came up with this idea that I suspect that sometimes it was better to be a slave that was treated well rather than be a free white person that was like dying of starvation and poverty.
Yeah.
Right. There are some families that were so poor and so oppressed by other white people, right, that they owed debts to or something like this, that, their children would starve to death. I mean, some bad things, really bad things happen.
Sure.
In history to every group, And just because your family history may not have had a slave in it, that you can tell from ancestry.com, that doesn't necessarily mean that your family, was some kind of like, super happy and privileged.
Yeah, I think there's a
for
lot of
eternity.
nuance to it. There's a lot of it's
Right.
not as black and white as you would say, and
Right.
I think that's interesting. And I wanna jump off to something else real quick. We're kind of getting towards
Mhm.
the end here, but by the way, thanks for coming on, Mr. Reagan, and join our
Oh, it's my
conversation.
privilege. My privilege. Thanks for picking up my little private DM on
Yeah, thanks
Twitter.
for slipping in those DMs, man. I feel special. I feel important. Glad it worked out too because I have been thinking about streaming, and then you kind of just popped up, and I'm like, let's just do it. Let's book it. And I wanted to do this
Right.
more. And also, thank you to the audience. By the way, I'm going to get to more of your chats in a second. But dudes, thanks for tuning in, guys. You guys are awesome. Make sure you check out Mr. Reagan. Of course, I got his link below this video, and
Yeah, you have something like 3 times as many subscribers as I do.
yeah.
So come on over
Yeah,
to my
go on Migrate,
channel,
guys. Yeah, he's
guys.
got a lot of great videos.
I'm just really trying to
I think it's
siphon
good. Yeah, I think
subscribers.
I think they'll enjoy it. I think both ways too. Like if your fans are interested, my fans are interested. Like we get along good. Our videos cover similar
Oh
stuff, but
crap! I forgot. I've got to actually post this because I forget because we had so much trouble starting this up that I forgot.
okay,
to
yeah,
post
go
on
ahead. I'm
YouTube.
going to read some of the super chats, and we'll get back into things. By the way, thanks again for these super chats, guys. It's really appreciated. This show is probably going to get demonetized depending on how things go. So I really appreciate that. So we can kind of sponsor the show, and then we're going to have more of these in the future. Probably, I think I might do in streams on Sundays if you guys are down for that. This is a little off center, but let me go ahead and read some of these chats from you guys. So it says, thank you, Talender, for $10. Australian ex-airman, I'm curious to know your thoughts on Tulsi, as I really like her policies. That's a good question. He says, second time doing this. He's an Aussie who loves American Bros, and he wants to know about Tulsi. So thanks for the 2 donations. That's awesome. Thank you, Talender. And we're gonna jump right into that. Then I think Reagan's done or trying to post. But what are your thoughts on Tulsi?
I love Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I did actually a series of videos on all the candidates, and Tulsi was the only one that had ideas. And I'm not talking about the debates. I'm talking about interviews that I've seen with her. Specifically, if you haven't seen the Joe Rogan interview with Tulsi Gabbard, watch that. She is so smart, and she's got so many. I don't actually think she's as much of a leftist as she pretends to be in these debates. I mean, she has to pretend to be far left in order to get the votes to get anywhere near being president or vice president or whatever she's shooting for. But I don't think she is. She used to be a Republican. She switched to the Democratic Party. When she decided,
she's like a longtime soldier, serviceman, like very much set up to be a conservative person. She's from a.
I don't think that I don't think that she did the service for. I think she did that for political reasons.
Okay.
I know that sounds really cynical, but she was a politician in Hawaii, and then she went into the military.
Is she from Samoa?
And then she went.
Is that what it was? Or is she from Hawaii?
No, she's Hawaiian, but I think one of her parents might be Samoan.
Yeah,
I think her
I forgot
Samoan
what it was, but I definitely seen. I know she's from Hawaii because I've seen the surfing pictures. I think we've all seen the surfing pictures, and I would say one point to definitely give Tulsi is she's the best looking candidate by far.
That's true. My girlfriend was watching the debates. She was like, "Oh, she's beautiful."
Yeah, best looking
She's
candidate,
beautiful.
possibly
she's good.
the most moderate. I've heard some bad signs about some of the issues, but I haven't really. I'm kind of like I like the debates and I like to follow them. And if they say something really dumb, I'll like call it out. But it's like I feel like it's too early. Like there's so many candidates right now. That's what's killing me. It's like there's 20 of them.
Well, no, they don't have any stars.
Yeah,
they don't have any standout
that's why.
stars. There's no Donald Trump. There's no Barack Obama in their group. I know people will be mad at me for calling Barack Obama a star, but he was. At the time, that guy was a standout.
Yeah. And that's how you could tell. It's like if we had a star in there, then like there wouldn't be as many people trying to jump in. They're like, oh no, it's gonna be him, it's gonna be him. But now it's like there's 20 people with no clout, and then like it could be anyone. I mean, I think it's still gonna be like Biden or Bernie or something, but I don't know. Who do you think it'll be?
It's a really tough call. Here's the thing: the left is so divided right now. The people on the very, very far left, the ones that are going to vote for Elizabeth Warren or Bernie or these guys, they'll never vote for a moderate, right? They're never going to vote for Biden or anybody like that. And then the people who want to vote for a moderate, they seem to only have one choice, right? Because the far left has a huge number of choices. They could pick Bernie, or they could pick Elizabeth Warren, or they could pick Kamala Harris, or there's a lot of people they could pick. The people. Yeah, Yang is a kind of an oddball. He's a little bit like Tulsi Gabbard. He has some interesting ideas.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Similar to Gabbard, Yang and Gabbard are like, maybe they're trying to get that younger, more moderate.
They're the only two that don't seem to practice identity politics in any way, and I love that. Andrew Yang annoys me though, because he always says, nobody's looking out for the working class white people. And the working class white people make up a huge percentage of the population. And if we're not thinking about them, we're really abandoning an entire section of the population. And this is obviously something the conservatives talk about a lot. Well, not a lot, but we actually we address it.
Someone needs to talk about it, right?
Yeah, and the fact that he talks about it makes me love him. But then when the leftists get on him about that, like, whoa, why are you trying to help out white people? He comes back with this, and this drives me nuts. He says, look, if we don't address the suffering of poor working class white people, they will become white supremacists. They will become white supremacists, and they will become dangerous. So the reason I want to help them is so that they don't murder all of us. Basically, this is his.
Yeah, I've heard him say some of that stuff. I've heard him go off of the.
So good. Up until this point,
like falling off the ledge. He's almost there though. Good thoughts on that. Let me jump back to the super chats. We're gonna try to get to all of them today, guys. So you still have some time if you want to drop in one. I'm gonna go through the next one. Thanks again to Talender, by the way. Next is Johnny the Whiz Kid. Curious, are you associated with Geeks and Gamers? Not associated. I'm a fan though. I watch Geeks and Gamers. They have great videos. Great channel. I've
got a super chat question
Go for
you. How nerdy on a scale from 0 to 10 would you say you are? 10 being, 10 being Stephen Hawking and 0 being me.
Well, I'm actually, I mean, you could probably say, people probably think I'm way nerdy, and I am. I'm not going to deny that. But I'm not filming in front of toys, so I have that going for me. So, I mean, that's one thing that I kind of just stay away from.
That is a good answer.
So I'm not like the 9 or 10 level nerd, but I'm like definitely
it's
close.
Funny because I actually can't tell when I watch your videos. Sorry,
Go ahead.
When I watch your videos and it's just the audio, I actually couldn't tell that you had a kind of a nerdy type, cultural thing. But then when I saw you in person, somehow the voice sounded different. I don't know what. Like when I saw your face,
I get that all the time. Yeah, I get that all the time. I think a lot of it too is, I'm used to voiceovers, and I've recorded all my videos that way, and then it's just like people, once you finally see I do some webcam, some videos, and it just like always blows people's minds. They're like, whoa.
I suspected you were a cam girl.
Yeah, sometimes I cam girl, that's what I do with that couch back there. That couch needs to get wiped down, by the way. But I'll get the maid on it later.
We're getting into dangerous territory. Yeah.
But good comment, good question there. Talking about Geeks and Gamers. Next one is from Trev. Thanks, Trev, for the $9.99. Appreciate that. They say I'm from Fort Bragg, and this is the first live stream. Real big fan. Thanks for that, dude. Appreciate it. And this is the first live stream we've had in a while too. Like I said, I think it's been about a year. I was telling Mr. Reagan before the show, I'm like, I got frustrated with it, and I couldn't get the stream to work, so I just kind of focused on videos for so long. But I'm glad it's back. This is fun. I'm definitely down to do more. So thanks for that, guys. What about you, Reagan? Do you live stream much?
I very rarely do. My manager, we have YouTube managers, guys. This is a real thing now. Actually, you and I have the same manager, which is funny. We did not know this when we set up this stream. I only found this out yesterday.
Good guy, good stuff.
But Ian, he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, Chris, you need to do a daily streaming show like Daily Wire, like Ben Shapiro, because you got the personality, you know what you're talking about, people will watch it, and you're going to get a ton of views." And so I've kind of been balancing that. I don't think I'm going to do it. There's a variety of reasons why it's just very difficult for me. I don't have a production crew. It's really just me and a camera, which I think is true with you as well, Brooks. And it's very, very, it's a huge undertaking to do by yourself, to do a broadcast show every day. And I could bring people in, but it's a little bit better for me at this time, I think, just to make 2, 3, 4 videos a
Yeah.
week, and and then try to, because I have some other things on the horizon, which by the way are amazing. Do you want to hear a
Go
secret?
for it.
There may be something coming out on my channel that may be coming out consistently, very short little things that are potentially animated and potentially about certain characters in in Washington D.C. that we all find amusing and
Okay. I think
interesting.
I could see where that's going. I think I catch your drift.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a little bit in the development process right now, but it's going to be
Dude,
awesome.
keep it up.
I'm very
Keep it up. And then so we both got new stuff going on with the streams and the animations and the comedy and the goals and the comments and the show, and you guys are awesome, and I'm just having so much fun. Back to the super chats though. Thank you, Talender, for another 5. They said next person to say Tulsi Gabbard. I swear to God, the Bolsheviks murdered the Romanovs. Great rough Russian references there. I appreciate that. More talk about Tulsi. Tulsi's a hot topic today.
Really,
Yeah.
that's funny.
I guess I don't think I've addressed it either on the channel, or I haven't talked about her. So I think maybe people are just thinking of it. And then we got.
If I became president, I would potentially run with her. I would potentially bring her as advice. I do not mind mixing a few leftists in with my at least with my advisory.
Yeah,
committee
I
here.
could see. I could see. I'd vote for you. Pickle
Yeah.
Rick would vote for
I
you.
would too.
He said, "Pickle Rick." Urara says, "What do you think of James Alsop? James Alsop's is a good dude. Good channel as well. I've had him. I think we've done streams a few times before, here or there. It's been a while. Have you seen James Alsop's YouTube?
Isn't he like highly controversial? I don't think I've actually seen his YouTube. I've only heard about him.
Yeah.
He's like very
you can
because he has some kind of like, people accuse him of being white nationalist.
Yeah,
or
I
something
mean,
like
I
that.
wouldn't call him controversial. I think he's just a normal dude making cool videos, but he's definitely gotten a bad rap. I think because he went to Charlottesville, and like so ever since that happened, I kind of wish I didn't even mention that.
That's probably why I heard of him,
yeah.
actually. Well, look, I mean, you get labeled. This is a tricky thing, this YouTube stuff, because you do get labeled. Like, I don't really know enough about this guy to comment intelligently, and that's awful. Because, like, if what you're saying is actually accurate and he's a great guy and he's got some interesting views, and maybe some of them are mildly controversial, but he's not like a legitimate racist. Of
course not. Yeah.
Then this idea that we're labeling him this way, or that I even have this suspicion because that's the only thing I heard about him. That's awful. That's awful. I think that's something that we need to all recognize, is like,
happens.
A lot of times we're labeled really in a cruel way, because it's a terrible thing to call somebody racist today. I think the only thing that's kind of good about that, well, not good. It's not good, because we want the racist term to have some weight. I think it's actually a useful term to use for certain kinds of people, but it's now getting so overused. It's like the boy who cried wolf. Nobody really believes it anymore. At least I don't. I hear the word racist and I think, okay, well, that means that the person accusing them is probably a racist. I don't even think the person that they're accusing is racist anymore. That's not my first thought, because it's been so overused.
Well, yeah, and I think most people would know that. It's like you wouldn't call people racist much anymore unless it's like really warranted. I mean, granted, I wouldn't say I don't do that, because I cover people that are like whatever, reverse racist, or like example you said, like people that are calling everyone racist, but they're the real racist. So like we talk about that.
Yeah. Brooks, actually, there's a term for that. It's called racist.
Reverse. It's not
reverse racist.
I was gonna say a reverse.
You're white and you're racist.
I think that's too simple though. I was gonna say like a reverse racist, but you just go simplifying things and being all smart.
No, there's no way. Yeah, there's no reason to say reverse. Well, people have this issue with reverse racism, like it's a bad thing, to say. So I'm like, okay, fine, we won't use that term. We'll just use the term that's even more appropriate. You're just
straight up.
If you think people are racist for being white, you're racist, right? Because if people are racist just because they're white, you're judging them on their skin color. And that's like the definition of racism.
Yeah, and I think that's the worst part about that one, and that's something we bump into a lot in videos, is just they think they're justified. They're like, oh, we have a justification. Like white people did slavery 100 years ago, 150 years ago.
Did slavery.
And
Yeah.
that's how they'll put it. And they're just like, all right, well, and that goes back to that Witcher story where they'll say, but they did this. And it's like, oh, so basically you're saying, you think these people did something bad a long time ago, so you're treating them shitty in the present. And it's like, that just makes you look like a racist in any situation.
Well, actually, let me comment on that
Sure.
quickly. Historically, there were a lot of beautiful, wonderful, amazing times. And within those beautiful, wonderful, amazing times, some people suffered. And that's true for black people. That's true for white people. That's true for everyone. Every single group suffered throughout history, right? And just because there were some times that we look at that some people were a little bit happier and had some better, what we might maybe consider better ethics, that doesn't mean every time we look back in the past, we want to draw out of the past all the worst possible things or the things that we no longer like. But that's the way they flip it. Right. So and it's really weird because even leftists, as I was growing up, they would say, like, I think I was born in the wrong time. I should have been born in the Middle Ages, or I should have been born in the 1920s, or I should have been born in the 1950s. And these are leftists talking. Right. Because maybe they like jazz, or maybe they like, medieval stuff or whatever. Different people like different stuff from different periods, and they think, oh, I grew up in the wrong time. I should have. I mean, the truth is, we live in the best time ever. I mean, we have iPhones, and everything's
For
pretty,
sure.
YouTube, everything's pretty cool. But people like long for those other ages, but they don't long for them because of racism. And that's just something that the left says in order to. It's so bizarre how they twist anything.
Yeah.
It's what they call a straw man, right? It's much easier to knock down that point than it is to knock down the actual point. If we say today we're not as ethical, that's something I was going to say about TV and film. We're doing all this stuff in the 80s. I don't think Hollywood even understands why the 80s are popular anymore. The 80s are today. The reason the 80s are popular today is because people yearn for a time in which we were more ethical.
Yeah.
And if you look at the films and TV shows of the 80s, they harken back to the 50s and 60s. A time when they thought we were more ethical and charming. Like, you've got Quantum Leap, you've got, what was that? The Wonder Years.
Right.
We've got all kinds of movies that
the other one I
80s,
thought of when you said it, I always remembered Happy Days reruns as a kid. And it was like,
another perfect example.
And I used to think when I was a kid, Happy Days was actually set in the 50s. And it was like, I just couldn't put all that together.
You mean shot
Yeah,
in the 50s,
yeah. But then it's like you get older and you're like, oh, wait, it was a 70s show based in the 50s. And it kind of like, that was a little layer there. But it's because of what you're saying. It's like there's the generation or two before where people kind of just have that nostalgia for this, whichever reason. I mean, a lot of the modern reasons in the last century is stuff like you said, morality, having a good... being safer is something people like to feel like, and it seems like a lot of things are crazier in the present, even though in a lot of ways we are safer. We're not worried about the Cold War. We're not worried about going into a world war or something. I think a lot of it goes back to if you want to go to the reason for that, it's like, oh, it feels less safe because we got all this technology, like you mentioned, iPhones, and it's like, okay, now we got these things that are kind of drumming up racial tensions or drumming up just drama online, and it makes people freak out, more panic, and it spreads quicker.
Yeah. Information is so accessible now, and you can reach a huge audience and cause a lot more hysteria, and there's a lot more people talking to everybody, as opposed to before it was just like a few people talking, and those people had a lot of power, a lot more power than we do now, but there were so few of them that they could be responsible. I was going to make this point. The left always says that the right is causing division in America. But I think that accusation causes division. I think making the accusation, it's very strange how the left acts. They call people racist if you're white, and to me that's racist. You tell people that they're causing division, and that causes division, right? They do all these things that are kind of almost to some degree self-fulfilling prophecies, in that they are actually guilty of the thing they're accusing other people of by accusing them of those things. I don't see Trump trying to divide anybody. I don't see Trump trying to do that. Trump is just Trump. Trump's doing Trump's thing. And then the left calls it racist, and they say, well, because you're doing something that's racist, you're causing division in the country. Well, no, actually, you're calling him racist is causing division in the country. If black people didn't hear you say that's racist every 3 seconds, they probably wouldn't even think it was racist.
Yeah.
But because CNN is constantly bombarding us with this narrative, people believe it, and then they hate conservatives and they hate Trump, and
it just keeps going and going. It's a bad snowball. And yeah, I think the last comment on that would be just, if anything, Trump brings people together, like lots of different people, and like he's got lots of they say different groups, like they try to pretend it's like white supremacists that support Trump, but I've seen loads of every single race, creed, and LGBT supporters, black people, whichever. It's like very open under that banner. And I think that's definitely the opposite of ways portrayed. But yeah, cool tangent. Let's get back to these chats and then we'll wrap.
Cool.
No, good. It's good. We're almost done with the super chats and then we'll wrap this whole thing up. Let's see. I think we said James Alsop last. Someone, Ann Dale did $5. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Tiago says £2. Hi from Portugal. Awesome. Portugal in the house. Mark Miller says thoughts on something that is too controversial to talk about. Thanks for the donation though, Mark. Texas T says, when are you going to point out how gun-free zones are dangerous? Again, a pretty controversial to talk about, but I appreciate the comment. SEK gave us $10, $2 to Atana Jade, saying, I'll give more later after I get paid. Thank you very much. You don't need to, but I appreciate that. That is awesome to everyone that donated, by the way. Last one's from Tango, saying, slavery is still practiced in Africa. Good point. There's plenty of other places that had longer and worse slavery than America, something we also went over in that video. And then the last comment from Hashay, thank you for the $5. They say, how do you feel about Tim Pool? Tim was also at Charlottesville. I think Tim Pool is a good channel as well. He does some good videos, some good reports, and commentary. What are your thoughts? Do you follow Tim Pool?
I do. I hate Tim Pool for the same reason I hate you. You're better at me at your job, and you have more followers.
Okay.
No. Tim Pool's great. He's a very, very smart guy. He's actually, I think, a Democrat, and he's a little bit more left leaning than I am, and he's an atheist. But and so we're going to differ on a lot of stuff. But he's so friggin' smart, and he really gets in there, and he's kind of ballsy. He goes to these places that are kind of dangerous, and he reports from them, and he reports every day on stuff, and he's ahead of the curve on just about everything. Something recently I disagreed with him on. He was saying that Trump was very aware of the tweets that he was making, because he wanted Pelosi to be aligned with the squad again. I don't think that was intentional from Trump. And then he actually went one step further and he said, actually, because Trump signed this new legislation, he had a new sort of policy about the third country thing. Have you heard about this? Like the third party countries. So if somebody's traveling from, say, Guatemala to the US and they go through another country, if they haven't applied for asylum in that other country, they will not be allowed to apply for asylum in America. And I think that this has been true to some extent since like the Obama years or even before that, but he's like expanded that. So now it's almost impossible for the caravanners to come through and get into the United States. This is probably would have been something that would have been covered quite heavily in the press had Trump not tweeted you guys can go back to your home countries and fix those countries first tweets that became a Twitter storm. So Tim Pool's thought was that Trump was doing this all intentionally. This is what he calls four-dimensional chess. No. If I know Trump at all, Trump just tweets what's on his mind.
Free balling.
Every week he tweets something. I think he could do. So if it just happens.
Yeah,
to be
I think sometimes though, like it does seem like 4D chess just because he's so on point. He can just freestyle at the over there. You know what I mean?
I think that the left is in such disarray with everything that they want to attack all the time. I mean, they're so about checking people with their rules and their little, their ideas about who's racist and who isn't and all this kind of stuff. They're so easily distracted that you just have to tell the truth and they lose their minds.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that's the
I think the
issue.
last comment is, again, you're talking about Tim Pool and you got into a lot of the politics stuff, but I think more important thing about his channel is, what do you think about Tim Pool's hat? because I'm a big fan of it. I think
The most
I
important
think
issue
it's
of
a
the
great
day.
looking stocking cap, and I wish I could pull it off. I don't know. Do you think it's cold in his studio?
I don't. I was gonna actually do an impression of all of the like quasi-conservative YouTubers, like the free speech YouTubers. I don't know what I call them. All of us. I was gonna do impressions of everybody, including
Okay,
you.
okay.
I may still do that video. I haven't had time to put it together, but yeah, Tim Pool. I was gonna get the
Yeah, you
hat,
got to get the hat. I'd
and
be down
that was
for
gonna
that.
be and put myself in the corner. Put myself in the
Go to the
corner.
White House with the hat on. But no, let's talk about the next topic here. We got a few more chat.
It's a branding thing. I
It's
think
the look. It's the look. It's like
it's smart. It's always
it's
smart
like
to
your
brand
hair.
yourself.
You know, you got
It's like
you got
my
the hair.
It's like this dot, whatever
Yeah.
it is there. It's like I have one too few buttons buttoned
like
up all the
the
time.
nightclub
That's
shirt.
always-
You're like just going. It's like L.A. baby. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, but thank you for that question and comment, everybody. Last one's, I think we got two more. Someone says, "Are you familiar with World Class Bullshitters?" I am. Great. That's another great YouTube channel. And then the last person mentioned Straight Pride Parade in Modesto the weekend before the one in Boston. Are you down? I would totally be down if I was close enough for that. But I think that is a good segue for our last kind of topic here. Let me just ask you, Mr. Reagan, finally before we go, have you had any thoughts on the Straight Pride Parade? Have you talked about that?
I tweeted a little bit about it. I thought it sounded like a fun idea. Is Sargon going to that? I thought I heard Sargon's going to that.
I'm not sure. We're going. Yeah,
you
yeah,
guys
we're
are
definitely
going,
going.
for sure.
We got.
What are the dates?
It's at the
What are
end
the
of
dates?
August. 31st is the date. The last day, I guess.
Yeah, I'll go. When is
It's in
where is it?
Boston. So kind of.
Boston. I've never been to Boston. I'm gonna do it. We're
Yeah, if
doing
you're
it.
down, I mean.
Hey Valeria, we're going to Boston.
Yeah, if you want to, for sure, we should meet there. We're definitely going. We already
Okay,
booked it because we did a whole video series, crowdfunded and everything. So we're like set up. And thanks again if anyone's watching that donated. That was awesome. I appreciate that, guys. Yeah,
That's amazing. Oh,
Yeah,
I
we're
should do
still
that.
going.
Let me text Sargon and see if
Yeah,
he's going.
check it out if
because,
anyone else wants to
because
go.
then we can all meet up.
But just in general, though, like when you say tweet about the story, like have you heard about it? Like you've heard the straight pride kind of thing. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Well, because here's the thing: the whole concept of being proud of your sexual orientation is. I mean, I understand why they thought that they would do it, but since I was a kid, watching these parades become more and more popular and like more and more accepted in society, I've always said the same thing to my gay friends who are not flamboyant or outrageous or whatever. It's like the flamboyant, outrageous gays ruin it for you. Because the people who find homosexuality to be disturbing, right? We have a disgust impulse, right? This is something that Jordan Peterson talks about a lot. We have a disgust impulse, and that's about contamination, right? You don't want your food contaminated. If you look at your soup and there's a fly in it, you're disgusted. Another way you can be disgusted is if you get a beautiful steak, right, for dinner. And let's say you have like a beautiful ice cream for dinner. And these are pristine. Like the steak is pristine, perfect, beautiful, exactly how you want it cooked. The ice cream is perfectly pristine, beautiful, exactly how you like it. And then the chef, instead of giving them to you separately, mixes them all up. Now you have steak, vanilla ice cream. It's a disgust impulse, right? Now, that's very much like relationships. I love my male relationships, my relationship with my brother, my relationship with my best friend Kurt, my relationship with you, Brooks. This to me is in one category. That's like the steak, right? That's like manly stuff. It's great.
Mange,
it makes
the
me want to
mange.
chainsaw some trees in the woods.
Yeah, I feel you.
The ice cream is like my romantic relationships. My relationship with my girlfriend. It's a beautiful, clean, beautiful thing. I do certain things with her. I do certain things with you guys. I don't want to see those two things mixed together.
I can see that.
Like, to me, that's disturbing. So if I see two guys making out, to me, these are like worlds colliding. And you might think, well, oh, that's not you. You're not doing that. Still, the idea disturbs me. I find it kind of gross. I'm sorry. That's just my natural reaction to that. There's not much that I can do about it. I think we have to be more tolerant of people like me.
Yeah,
that's
and
all I'm saying.
I think straight people need to have their own space too. And I think, like you said, it is a funny thing. I've admitted, I'm not like 100% going like seriously, like, oh my God, we need straight people equality or something. But whenever it came up and I saw the event and I'm like, Boston, I'm available. Why not give it a shot? I liked,
I
yeah.
love it so much. I love the idea so much because I mean, I assume for at least everyone involved. Now, I may be wrong. Some people might take it very seriously, but I assume it's a kind of a joke.
Yeah, but like,
right? It's like basically
you
trying to say like you don't need to be proud of like immutable characteristics.
Yeah, and I think it's just I wouldn't say it's like being done as a complete joke, but there's fun to it. Yeah, it's like we're not trying to say, oh, there's no negative side to it. Like, oh, like a lot of people against it are saying, oh, it's anti-gay people. This is very trying to
No.
throw it in their faces. But I just see it as a fun thing. It's an event, and a lot of people started to get interested. That's why we started things up on our channel, and it could be a good time.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I go there and we meet up, if I accidentally slip my hand into yours, I apologize, Brooks. I might not be able to.
That's allowed though. Gay love is allowed. It's gay. Straights are very welcoming. The gays won't let.
That's right. It's an inclusive celebration.
We've done. Straights have let gay people in our country for years. No, it's not like that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But thanks everybody for watching. Great show. Awesome time. Thank you especially to Mr. Reagan for being our guest. Appreciate it, buddy. Make sure you guys check out his channel, of course. I got a link below. Search Mr. Reagan on YouTube. Any final thoughts from you, sir? Do you got anything coming up this week? You want to plug a new video or something?
No, but I should plug the International Conference on Men's Issues that's happening the 16th, 17th, and 18th in Chicago. So if you're going to be in that area and you want to go to the International Conference on Men's Issues, that's kind of a big deal.
Going?
Yeah, I'm going to speak at it. Karen Strawn is there. She's awesome. Sargon's going to be there. Count Dankula is there. There's going to be lots of cool people. You can go try to find the website. It's kind of a hard website to find, but if you can find it and you can get tickets, that's an amazing thing to do. That's not really my thing, but I think it's a good thing to post. And I would also like to say, again, you legit have one of the best channels of our kind. Thank you. On YouTube. Yeah. I was going through a lot of your videos recently, and I'm in awe of every video, and I hate that there's
thank you. I appreciate that.
It makes me want to up my game. I feel like all my videos
you do the same for me, man. Like I watch channels like yours, and other people mentioned today, Don't Walk, James Alsop. Like you guys keep me inspired too. Yeah, great. And I'm glad we can all connect. Thank you especially to the audience, everybody watching. You guys are why we do this. Really appreciate it. Really good show. We'll see you next time. Just make sure you guys drop a comment, drop a like on the video if you want more streams like this. That helps. The donations help, and I appreciate those as well. So until next time, we'll see you guys there. Bye-bye. Let's see. End the stream.